being present means you are not only just watching, but you're also guiding. And that place of guidance is what is most important. We never had conversations with our parents. I had friends who would say to me, they never had a sit down to talk to their parents. But today, we are seeing that it's non-negotiable, especially if you're going to channel the child's energy or channel the child's thoughts into things that are going to be productive. You have to show them why, because by default, the world is not going to show them in the way that is entirely positive. By default, the world is going to lead them to those things that basically makes them feel good.
Hello everyone, welcome to the super duper exciting episode of the LHC Pod. And you know how we're doing it here. We give you the best of the best. It is the Lighthouse Conversation where we educate, entertain, and inform you in all sphere, all sector that you can ever think of. And you know how we're doing it. I'm not here alone. I have my co-presenter here. Lola, what's
Lola
up?
in the building.
We're far off today.
You better recognize.
Right? On the podcast. How's it been?
It's been good. You know, they say life happens and everything, but everything has been...
What happened though? What happens?
Well, maybe the question is more like, what's happening?
Okay, what's happening?
What's happening? So I think we're hustling as usual, keeping pace with family and friends, stuff like that. So I would say yes.
Okay, fantastic. So stuff happens, things are evolving, things are changing. And what has changed today?
Your hairstyle?
And you would notice that...
Your hairstyle has changed?
Yes, I think my hairstyle has changed. Some person said I've been too conventional, so I decided to go Gen Z a little bit.
But it's not bad. It's not bad. I mean,
and you know, there is a story behind this hairstyle.
Oh, really?
Maybe I
can you share?
Yeah. So for me, keeping afro is something that I love so much, and I hold dear. So I'm also reminded that I don't have to worship the hairstyle. So once in a year, or sometimes I just cut and then feel, just so that I am not boxed with keeping that hair. So I just cut it in whatever way I want, so that at the end of the day, I can do away with the hair and I won't feel.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I won't feel bad about it, because
sometimes
when you keep hairstyle, you want to look a particular way, so it becomes something very. You look at it and say, "Oh, can I do this or not?" But once you do that, mystic around it, it's kind of
Interesting.
It's interesting, you know, because you're talking about it, and it's kind of, so it resonated with me because it speaks to bonding. So it's okay. This is my image, and I'm trying to divest from this specific image. I'm trying to go into a different perception of who I am, so that they don't wake up tomorrow and say, "Oh, this is Emmanuel," and you're seeing the same old. So it's good to change things up once in a while.
Yeah, talking about changes, you would also say that our background has changed,
yes,
right? So
it has, and I'm loving it.
It. Yeah, and today we're shooting out of the studio. And why are we
outside?
doing? Yeah, we're outside. We're outside. Why are we doing this? It's because we want the best of the best content for you, something that will inspire, motivate you. And because of that, we are shooting outside the studio. And we have a very, very big guest in our midst today. As always, you know how it goes, right? So before I let the cat out of the bag...
The cat, okay. Carry on.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yes.
Carry on.
What cat? Yeah, cat. Is there anything wrong with that?
No, carry on.
Okay.
We're going somewhere.
Yes, just before we unveil the person we have in our midst, I think Lola would definitely do that. Okay, so
yes.
So what do you have for us?
Ooh, this is the part I love because I build suspense, and Emmanuel is like, out with it already. So no time. No, there's time today.
Okay.
So we're talking about, earlier we were talking about bonding, and there's something that we can all resonate with, which is bonding with your family, bonding with your children. So we thought to ourselves and said, you know what, let's talk about parenting today. Let's talk about parenting, but not just parenting. We're all parented and everything. So let's drill it down to the latest generation of parents. Well, Okay, are they the latest? Yes. Millennial parents.
Oh, you also have Gen Z parents already.
We have Gen Z. I think Gen Z is coming up to their 30s now. Okay.
Yeah.
Possible. Yes. Okay. So let's not say latest, but yes. So we can say the most recent before the latest set of parents, which is millennial parents.
Fantastic.
So we're talking about millennial parenting today.
And who do we
And
have?
who better to discuss this with than someone very dear to us?
Okay.
Someone who is also a millennial parent. He may agree or disagree, but that's besides the point. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to introduce to you Kayode Odetola.
Thank you.
Yay. Thank you very much for having me.
Kayode.
Hi,
on board.
Kayode.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel and Lola. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm excited listening to the awesome work that you guys are doing. I think
Thank you.
it's a huge step in the right direction. And
Thank
I
you.
think very many people, your listeners, will be really convinced and would learn, from a day-to-day perspective, on these conversations that are really lighthearted and make for better listening. So thank you once more.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
And
Great.
thank you
Great.
for honoring us, honoring the invitation.
It's a
We
pleasure.
appreciate you. Yes,
Okay.
talking about parenting.
So, Kayode, you're a parent. How's it been? Let's start from there.
Great, Lola, thanks. And I would want to maybe basically just start off from the example you used initially when you
Okay.
said there are some people who are just becoming parents, and there are some people who have been categorized as a millennial parent. I'm probably struggling to find out who the millennial refers to. Maybe it's the children or the parent, but by and large, I think the point here is parenting cuts across all spheres. And I think for me, if I would use my case as an example, I know there are several dimensions that we're going to be looking at this from, but I think to keep it very simple and just really set the tone for today, it is really just the act of trying to make an individual a better version of themselves. And I don't want to call it an individual by just saying anybody, but these are children whom you are first and foremost a custodian to. Not only are you just the father or the mother, but you have a custodial role to nurture them and to make them the best version of themselves. So it's a journey that starts from the first cry, or maybe we should even go back to when the mom feels the bump and knows that there is something there, until the point where the child comes out. And, from that day, it's a whole new world of experience for both parents.
Wow.
But yeah, I think let's start from there, and then we can take it on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So,
Fantastic.
I can imagine that for you, it's been a journey not just filled with challenges, but overall rewarding.
So you're right, Lola. Rewarding, yes.
Okay.
Challenging, very well, yes. But I think the good thing about challenges is you also learn, along the way.
Right.
I have 3 kids,
Okay.
my eldest is 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't look it though.
Well, yeah, that's what most people say, but yeah, probably started early enough.
Okay.
He's 18. My 2 girls are 15 and 13.
Wow.
So I hung my soccer boots about 13 years ago.
Whoa. You've been at it for a while.
But yeah, but if you look at it very closely, I think it's been, depending on the cycle you are in life and the phase where you are, it probably, for some people, for example, if I had the benefit of and the privilege of starting earlier, but I also had the pressure of trying to meet up with certain demands that in some instances maybe I was not too prepared for, but you still had to sort of meet up with them.
Yeah.
Something happened a couple of days ago at the bank. I went there with my son because now he's 18, and I got a text message on his birthday basically saying, you need to transfer his first account to him.
Whoa.
So I told him, let's go to the bank. And when we got to the bank and they pulled out all these forms, and my son was like, Dad, let's just leave it the way it is. I said, no, you don't understand. I don't want to keep getting your text messages. I don't want to keep, monitoring every kobo that you spend, because I feel that to a great extent, I'm not giving you the liberty to be who you want to be from a financial angle. But at the same time, I also want to have a say, or want to be able to peep into what your spending pattern looks like. So we got to the bank, and the bank manager, I had to go get the new ATM cards. And he said to me, you have 2 cards here that you're supposed to pick up. And I said, yes. He said, yours? I said, yes. And he said, your brother? And I said, no, my son. He said, no, your brother? I said, no, my son.
Whoa.
And it started a whole, different line of conversation.
Wow.
And I guess, as we go along today, I would keep referring to that incident, because I spent over an hour at the bank, but it was 1 hour that was full of insightful ideas around, what. Fortunately, this guy was much older than myself, but was also sharing his own life experiences from a moral science standpoint, from even things as basic as how do you really connect with this generation of children that we're raising today, who there are no holds barred. They don't filter anything. They say it as it is, and they will call you out, without holding anything back.
Yes,
they do.
Well, you heard from the horse's mouth. We'll go on a short break, and we will be back. All right, welcome back. Well, we've been discussing millennial parenting, right? And so far, Kayode has been immersing us, baptizing us with his experience and wisdom so far, right? So, Kayode, you've said so much, and what piqued my interest in this whole conversation is how you've been able to navigate through the years in bringing the kids up and handing over the accounts to them and beginning to show your first child how to take responsibilities in terms of financial management, henceforth, even if he still needs certain guidance. One question that I would like to ask so far is, how has the journey been, knowing that they are exposed to tech, and you're not just speaking basically to your kids now, but generically, they are exposed to tech, so much information out there, and that is constantly impacting on upbringing so far. How have you been able to navigate that?
Great, Emmanuel. I think that's a very good point that you have picked on. But maybe just to backtrack a bit, I would want to probably start off using a reference point.
Okay.
The experiences of parents today would, to a large extent, also determine or depend on what they were exposed to. So if we take it back, say 20, 30 years, most of us were still, young.
Yes.
We had parents. I think in our own time, and I would speak for myself, my dad was someone who was very gentle. He was also very open to engaging.
Okay.
And he always believed in you trying to do things yourself. Whereas my mom, on the other side, was very strict. And she was a no-nonsense person. And most of the time, what we saw was their approach to dealing with issues sort of complemented each other.
Okay.
So if we did something bad, mom would raise hell, fire, and brimstone. Dad would come around and help us to understand why. Right.
Yeah.
Now, that has been my own experience growing up. So when I became a parent, the first thing I said to myself is, how do I want to nurture my relationship with my children.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a father who is away. I'd rather be a father who is available, and which means that I have to set my priorities straight. And whether I like it or not, it has also sort of influenced the kind of jobs that I've found myself doing, because I always want to try and make out time for them. And the reason is not just because you want to be with them. So oftentimes we hear things, I'm not sure, we hear a statement like our lives were not carved, that our lives were chiseled, more or less breaking out the rough edges. The children that we are raising, the kids that we're raising, are in a very peculiar world, very much different from what we experienced. But the basics or the foundation of engaging them has not changed.
Okay.
And that is one key point that we must note.
Okay.
What we need to do as parents, the foundation is first and foremost being there and being present.
Do you think that parents are there for their children?
Well,
as much as it should?
Well, it depends on how you slice and dice it. Okay. I think to a great extent, any well-meaning parent would make out time for their children. We know that today the world of work has also changed. We know that it's economy-wise, it is also extremely challenging. So what we refer to as always being there or being present may mean one thing to Lola. I may mean something else to you. Absolutely. You know, I might believe that being present for my child means being available 2 weekends a month to spend time to either go and watch a movie with them or play football with them or even play, video games with them. To somebody else, it might be being able to pull them around at the end of each day, right? And spend some time reflecting on what their day has been like, what they've learned today, depending on how they are brought up. There is no one size fits all. But we know that as we continue to raise children and as the world evolves, there are certain things that we cannot take for granted. We can't take for granted the fact that we must be there. But over and above being available and being present for them, it's the values that you want to instill in them and how you go about actually actualizing that as well.
Yeah, the reason why I asked is when you check some of the habits, attitude put up by young kids these days, you question the parenting style. At the end of the day, you see kids who are very nonchalant, who don't even want to take anything serious, who are constantly cap in hands, demanding, and do not want to take responsibilities. And we have these increasing in our society. And one wonders if the millennial parent is actually living up to expectation in the kind of training they are giving to. I'm not saying in all cases, so there are a few exceptional, there's a percentage that's exceptional. But generically, you find out that things are changing. Is it the tide that is changing? Is it the influence of tech that is affecting the moral standard that we currently have? What exactly is informing these changes that we have?
Great question, and I think you're right to an extent. I also believe that sometimes statistics also helps us. So let's use Nigeria, for example. We're in Nigeria,
yes,
right? Nigeria has a population of over 220 million people.
Yeah.
We're told that, or we understand that more than 50% of them, probably about 110 million plus, are below the age of 18. In fact, the median age in Nigeria is just below 18. It starts to give you an idea of what you expect to see in the society.
Yeah.
Because the bulk of people you see on the streets, right, we used to think we're young.
Yeah,
but they are very quick to correct us that we're old, even though we feel very young at heart. But they correct us very quickly. So when you have it, it's like you going into maybe I would use an example. Look at the guys who do gymnastics. The American Simon Biles. She started off at a very, 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 young age.
Yeah.
And I recall watching a particular event where she had some missteps. Her coach thought it was okay, but she felt really disappointed with herself. When you trace it back, you probably will find out that one of the parents must have had a keen interest in what she's doing, to the extent that they have defined for her what perfection is. Now, if we take that back to our society today, the things that we see in our society today is not simply because the children don't want to do what they want to do, don't want to, keep the morals. It's because, like I said earlier on, there is a foundation that we lay, and that foundation is what we build on. There's the external influence of the world and how the world perceives and sees things that they need to guard themselves against. Now, bear in mind, when we were growing up, and I can say that because I know you guys to a great extent, our parents gave us the free hand to do certain things. I probably didn't have my dad or my mom by my side when I was going to check my results for my WAEC.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
I don't think anybody followed me to the university when I went to, start the process of admission and everything.
Definitely.
It wasn't even a thought.
Really.
Great. But today,
today.
it is sort of needed. Not because the children are not able to do it, but because we have moved away from a world where some of us will play football from 4:30 in the evening or from 4 o'clock in the evening till 6:30, and we'll go to the tap and wash our legs, look prim and proper, and pick our notebook from the side of the road and pretend to our parents like we're coming from lesson. Right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, we were smart enough to know what was expected of us. And so the pressures that we see today were not entirely present in that way. And so we could channel our energies into sports. We could channel our energies into extracurricular activities. We could channel our energies into anything. And our parents, in many instances, would just give us the free hand to be able to do it. Today, we cannot allow that freedom to that extent.
Right.
Reason being that, like I've said, the world has transformed totally. Right? So, for example, and I know we're going to talk about technology, but let's look at social media.
Okay.
A child from the age of 10 wants to own a phone, right? And you often ask yourself, what's a child, at 10 years old doing with a 10-year-old child? What's he or she doing with the phone? And there will be arguments for and against it, particularly because the part of the world where you stay also dictates how these things work.
Yeah.
So, if I feel that a child needs to get a phone, what are the things that he or she needs? Should I get the child a basic feature phone that only has games like, the snake and all of those things on the phone? Because at that point, that's all they need, right? But if they're in a class where by the time they get to age 13, and everybody in their class has a smartphone, they will start questioning why they don't have a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
So those kind of behaviors need to have been managed from day one. Knowing that, yes, I can see that 5, 6, 7 people in your class have a smartphone, but I don't think you need a smartphone right now for the following reasons. And maybe to backstep a bit, that is when I say being present means you're not only just watching, but you're also guiding. And that place of guidance is what is most important. We never had conversations with our parents. In fact, I recall that I had friends who would say to me, they never had a sit down to talk to their parents. Right?
Yeah.
But today, we are seeing that it's non-negotiable, especially if you're going to channel the child's energy or channel the child's thoughts into things that are going to be productive. You have to show them why, because by default, the world is not going to show them the way that is entirely positive. By default, the world is going to lead them to those things that basically makes them feel good.
Okay, thank you very much, Kayode, for that exposition, I would say.
Pleasure.
If you look at it, if I understand correctly, you said that the presence of parents differs. What used to be in the old may not necessarily be what we have now, may not necessarily be what we have now, but it doesn't change anything. But when you look at comments or commentaries in the society, people are saying that there is the school that thinks that the millennials are more upright when you compare them with the Gen Zs. And if you say that the presence may be in different form, how come would you agree to say that the millennials are more upright, when morally upright when you compare them with the Gen Zs?
Interesting viewpoints. Very interesting.
Right.
But I want to look at it from two views. I would use the words instruction and engagement.
Okay.
If you look at the generation of millennials and just I think before the millennials, we had the baby boomers. Yeah. The dream that was painted to many of us was go to school, finish with good grades, get a job, and work your way to get to the top.
Yep.
There is a process that is defined. You don't rock the boat. You don't ask questions. You're almost instructed on the way to live life. And that is what we inherited.
Yeah.
Right.
We expected that the world will work in a certain way. We expected that we would grow old and do certain things. Right? So if you look at the millennials, a lot of their lifestyle or the way they view life has been more from an instructive standpoint. So everything has been tailor-made and created in such a way that it's almost sequential, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I had people in my times in my 20s who would ask their parents why they need to go to school or why they need to go to or finish up in the university.
Yeah.
Those were not discussions that were open for the table.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you had an instruction,
you have to go to
and
school.
you had to, the ones who were bold enough, most times would probably study a course that the parents had said they should study. And then, they will come out and say, now I've studied the course
for you.
Yes.
Now I'm going to do what I want to do. And those they're few and they're few and far between. Very few of them who had, that boldness to be able to do that. When you now come to engagement, we realize that the children, the Gen Zs, that as we refer to them, are people who are a lot more engaging. They're fearless.
Yes.
They're fearless.
Why?
I think there's this thing that comes with knowledge. They say knowledge is latent power.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's a generation that is potentially has access to knowledge because of the way the world has been crafted, because of the impact of social media and the internet. So they're a bit more potentially aware of their rights, aware of the fact that they do not also like the position in which they see their parents. And they think that there is a lot that can change. And of course, we're used to that slang in our own side of the world, which says, Soros, okay.
Yeah.
It's a slang that was
Speak up.
Yes, right.
very much
speak up.
alive 4 years ago, and sometimes up until now you still hear it. And when you look at Kenya, for example, look at the events that have happened in Kenya, and look at the median age of the people who have taken part in those riots.
Yeah.
They're in their early 20s, and these are people who very well understand what they're fighting for. And they were able to get to the point where, in unity, they decided to demand for the things that they wanted. But why I say engagement is what makes the difference is, with instruction, chances are that you are going to toe a certain line. And that line is meant to, if you follow the rules, lead you to a safe place.
Yes.
With engagement, you're going to ask 1,000,001 questions, but you are also going to have to decide for yourself where you want it to lead you. And if there is no guidance, by default, they would go with what everybody believes to be the norm.
Yes.
And you and I know that the norm in our present day and times is really far away from what you want to see from a moral uprightness standpoint. And this is not about religion or our faith. It's really just doing what is right and maintaining a certain status quo that is acceptable in whatever community you find yourself in.
Wow.
Cool. Wow. And I think you've really expressed a lot of the, how would I put it now? A lot of the things around intergenerational parenting. And I could tell, listening from you, the stark differences. Because to your point, I couldn't imagine saying to my parents, for instance, some of the things that, you have the younger generation saying to their parents. We have all those jokes every time on social media where parents come online and they tell you things their children said as comebacks. And you listen to some of these things and you're saying to yourself, wow, I wouldn't have tried.
And because,
in line with the instruction.
And to your point, because we want the best for the children.
Yes.
And because we see that this generation needs a lot of help and guidance.
They do. Sure.
I don't, when I have these discussions with my colleagues or my contemporaries, I always talk about the place of presence and guidance. Some people are present, but they are letting them do whatever they want to do.
Absolutely.
Presence and guidance go hand in glove. You can't separate them. If you have made yourself present, you need to guide them to become a lot more self-aware, not only of themselves, but in the environment in which they find themselves, because that is where they build the confidence.
But again, to my point, I totally agree with you, right? But sometimes, don't you think that being present can be burdening? Hear me out. Sometimes you want to be there for the kids. The kid says, you are too present in my life, and I don't want you in any of this.
But is there anything like being too present, though?
Yeah, on social media, certain accounts, they express themselves. For instance, you want to follow your child to school, and the child says, "Dad, I don't want you. Why are you here? Like, why are you visiting?" Right? So we've had cases like that. So at what point do you know your limits where you need to draw back? Because sometimes this is the same thing that we've complained about. I recall that each time I'm traveling, up till now, I don't tell my dad the exact time I'm leaving. And when I arrive, I can tell my dad I'm traveling tomorrow. Possibly I'm traveling today. You know why?
Why?
I just want to reduce the number of calls I will receive while traveling. So I'm usually not, okay, you know what, just let me, either I'm traveling. Once I get there, I can call and say, you know what, I'm here now. But for every 1 hour, top of the hour, you would get a call.
And that's stressful.
And
sounds stressful.
You understand? You will get a call. And for me, that is, it's beyond, it has become being
Too present.
Too present to becoming a burden where you would have to pick calls every hour. Right? So what do I do?
Should I say?
I had to devise a means, and it's basically, okay, Dad, I'm traveling day after tomorrow. You say, okay, fine, no problem. I'll keep in touch, no problem. But I know I'm traveling tomorrow. So I travel. He calls, I'm like, oh, sorry. Or maybe I will call him and say, oh, sorry, I'm already here. What happened? Plans changed. So I do that. Right? And it's because I know my parents and I know how they react, how they can constantly follow up, want to know you're fine and all of that. And sometimes it becomes a shackle.
So, Emmanuel, to your point, and this example you've given is a very classic example.
Okay.
There are ways by which we interpret some of these calls. So, if a father or a mother can't be too present in their child's life, they can't be too present because what I mean by that is we're first and foremost custodians.
Yeah.
Okay.
These children have been given to us to nurture.
Right.
And nurturing is a process and it takes time. If you want it to blossom and blossom the way, you would be there every step of the way.
Right.
Societal pressures and influences. Sometimes a 15-year-old girl, sees that her colleagues or her friends, the parents don't bring them to school. Want to also ask, why are you bringing me to school? Or I think I can go to school myself. For someone who's not even taken a cab before. And which is why I said that the circumstances and the factors within which we're raised are always very different.
Yeah.
We want to be present, right, as parents.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also want to give them room to express themselves.
Okay.
But like the eagle, who would allow the eaglet to fall, in a bid to try and fly, and would watch it all the way till before he hits the ground, before he goes to pick it up. If it refuses to spread its wings, it would do that time and again until the time when that eaglet opens up the wings and sees that, there's a different world, in it. We have to be there for these children, and we don't have that choice because the world is going to define for us what those children ought to be. It's already been defined for us.
It is actually.
We probably don't have that much time to go into the moral failures because it's not enough to talk about just the morality, but also the moral failures that are being condoned in our day-to-day world.
Yeah, but we can scratch the surface.
Yeah,
we'll try.
There is a moral failure that
Yes.
is etching into the fabric of the community, and it's spreading like wildfire. There is a moral failure that is sweeping the whole of Europe today, simply because there are certain things that certain people have turned a blind eye to.
Absolutely.
There's a moral failure that is coming from the press. There is a moral failure that is coming from entertainment. There are movies that you'd watch today and you would finish the movie and you're saying to yourself, wow, thankfully there are no obscene or there are nothing distorting the course of nature. You understand where I'm coming from?
Right.
Yes.
You rarely find those things today. And why am I saying these are influences? We spend the greater part of our time listening, watching, viewing.
Absolutely.
Why do I talk about the place of presence and guidance? It is what they see us do that they will do. No matter how bad the world becomes, when you make up your mind to nurture your child in a certain way and in a certain direction, I like to quote this saying. It's found in the Bible, but it's a saying that I think has also helped me to sort of focus. When I say it to people, I don't quote it like I'm quoting the Bible, so it doesn't seem like something too burdensome. It says we should walk out our life, right?
Yeah.
An extension of our life is our belief, our salvation, with fear and trembling.
Yes.
I tell people, You have to work out parenting with fear and trembling. You have to work out the need for you to be a better version of yourself with fear and trembling. It's a conscious effort. It's not something that happens whilst you are folding your arms.
At all. Yeah.
Right? It is a conscious effort. And what does that fear and trembling mean? It means that there is a place for you to sit down and count the costs and understand the path that you want to take and stick to it no matter how painful it is. We go to the gym to get in shape, right? We eat certain foods to remain healthy. We stay away from certain kinds of, medications because we know it has impacts on overworking the kidneys and all of those things. Yeah. But we learn those things and we try. It's difficult. It is the day that you do not want to take ice cream that your friend will bring the fresh, the free
delicious,
bowl of
my.
Exactly.
And we have someone who loves ice cream so
Absolutely.
much.
Absolutely. So what am I saying? If we understand that, how much more the children who still seek for guidance, who still can't find their way in a world that is moving at the pace of, it's a breakneck speed. It's something that you can't sit and assume that the world will be the same thing the way it was a month ago. Things are changing. And, when you talk about the morality, we also look at it from the path of education.
Okay.
We have not come to a place where we haven't realized that the kind of education that we got and the kind of exposure that we got is already outdated. The world is moving at breakneck speed. Education, inventions, and technology is moving at breakneck speed. But we are still learning how we were learning 30, 40 years ago. I used to crack a joke. Okay. And maybe part of the privilege I had to realize this early enough was the fact that I went to a school where one of my lecturers had a notebook where he used to read the lectures from. Okay. And on a certain day, he left the lecture notes. This is university. He left the notes on the table. Okay. He forgot it in the lecture room. Okay. And we had to go and give it to him. Okay. Now, we used to call this professor a genius because when he opens the notes, he just keeps reeling out from his head. And you're writing and you're wondering, how does this man know all these things?
Right.
But we found out that notebook was dated a month before I was born.
Whoa.
It's the same book that he's used for
over and over. So he's
used to it. That is what we continue to regurgitate over the years.
Wow.
We have gotten to the point where we know today that any child who is above the age of 10 should start being exposed to things like coding is even not even out of place right now. It's pure artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
They need to start understanding the basics of artificial intelligence. They need to start to understand what are those things that is making the world tick. And that is where part of the morality comes through, because we know that there is also a downside to artificial intelligence. And we cannot shy away from the downside. There are people who are clamoring. So if you use that example and know that the world itself is not going to remain the way it is. You have to choose the path and how you want to groom these children.
Yes.
Now, how much free time do we need to give to them? I think it would depend on what you want to achieve. But baseline is we cannot put ourselves in a situation where we become mother hens.
The temptation is high.
We have to get to a point where we make them realize that there are certain choices that they would need to make themselves. I often crack a joke with my son and I say to him, when he wants to go out and do certain things, I would say, I hope you have come of age now, so there are certain decisions that I can't take for you again.
Right.
And he would say, no, I'm still living in your house. I say, I totally agree. But in a couple of years from now, you also will not be living in my life, in my house. But there are certain decisions that you start to take now. And even when somebody questions you, you need to be able to stand for yourself to say, the reason I took this decision is because of X, Y, Z.
Yes.
That period is not too far away.
Actually.
You are laying those stones from now. And the more you get into that mode, the more you understand who you are, the more you become, the greatest thing any child can do for themselves is the point where your parent leads you to a place where you become self-aware.
Absolutely.
Because once you're self-aware, you can start to take decisions. You can start to think, how morally upright or how morally bankrupt do I want to become?
Yes.
But at least you have a choice. And that is the free will that has been given to each and every one of us.
Okay, we take a short break. We will be back. Welcome back. Yeah, Lola.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Emmanuel. So, Kayode, you raised a very important point about the role technology is playing. So, I'd like us to examine that a little bit more closely in terms of the role that technology itself is playing in the raising of today's children. So, back in the day, you know, we always had this thing where, of course, it was said that our parents had more time for us because there wasn't technology distracting us and everything. But now...
Yeah, because you were raised manually.
Me or you? Okay. Exactly.
All right, yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. And then, you know, we now have the technology age, and then we're talking of children being given, well, let me be more specific now. The younger children, for example, you know, we have busy parents. Most parents are out earning an income. So what they do is they outsource the help. And part of outsourcing the help is getting some entertainment for the children. So you have scenarios where instead of talking to a 1-year-old or, you know, giving them some bits of guidance, you
just
put a tablet in front of them, put them in front of the TV and play cartoons for them for a significant portion of the time. It has been argued that this is dumbing down children because it is not giving them the room to develop emotionally. Rather than connecting with other children, they are more internally focused, so they do not know how to articulate their emotions well. And even in the younger generation of children, you're beginning to see some things where they lash out at people around them in ways that children of previous generations didn't. Because, you know, we mentioned earlier about taking time out after school, going to play and all that. They don't have any of that these days. How do you think that is impacting this new generation of children being raised by millennials and even the generations after that, the ones that would be raised by Gen Z and so on and so forth, now that we have technology fully in the picture?
So technology has come to stay, and you raise a very valid point, Lola. Okay. Technology is no longer a choice. It is something that has been etched into the fabric of the community, and as the world evolves, as days go by, it's going to get, you know, better or worse as the case may be, and children are not shielded from this as well. I think dunking down on them, and you made a very valid point earlier on where you spoke about the absence of parents or blocking the time of being able to build emotional connection with gadgets to while away time. And sometimes some parents will tell you certainly there are some valid reasons for it. So others will tell you, you know, obviously you need, but again, the point I'm trying to make is all of what we're discussing today still boils down to the fact that the outcomes that we want would usually be a choice.
Right.
If I share my own personal example, when my son was 2 years old, from the time he was 6 months till about probably almost 2, myself and my wife were gainfully employed 9 to 5.
Okay.
We will take him to my mother-in-law's place on Sunday night because work starts on Monday morning, and we go pick him up on Friday night after work. Yes, so we wouldn't see him throughout the week. Now, it's a no-brainer. After a couple of months, the young toddler started to call grandma, mama, and mommy.
Wow.
And didn't really recognize the mom as
Mom.
such. I'm a bit more playful, with kids. So he and my father-in-law was not the playful type. So nobody could take my own place, because when he saw me, we would play, throw him up, do all sorts, and he could recognize Dada.
Okay.
But it was a concern for my wife, and it was a huge concern because I saw that bond was not really being built the way we would have loved it to be built. We had to make a decision.
Okay.
My wife quit work.
Wow.
She quit work. At that time, she had only worked full-time employment for about 3 years.
Okay.
And she quit work.
Okay.
And she's quit work for close to 15 years now.
Whoa. That's a massive sacrifice.
But
yeah.
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
When I'm at work and it's 2:00, I get colleagues who are, already panicking because they need to be sure that there's somebody at home to receive their child. They need to be sure that everything is, all their ducks are in a row. They need to hope that there is no meeting that they will be stuck in, because even they want to go and spend their break time to quickly pick up the child, nothing gets in the way. Sometimes it gets so heated that they forget, and then they have to call the school to get. All of these things are not the actual design that, the economy. I don't want to use the word economy loosely. It's not the actual design for how we should actually, nurture these children. And that's why I started off with the place of presence.
Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to have somebody who was at home full time with them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, we also had to pay a price.
Yeah.
We couldn't travel like my other friends who earned so much, had 2 income. It was a 2-income family. You could travel and go for summer and do all of those things.
Yeah.
We couldn't do all of that. We couldn't afford all of that because it was a 1-income family. My wife had to start a small business on the side, also to sort of nurture herself and just ensure that she kept going. But it was just a small business. It was to keep heart and soul together. And so she also doesn't lose out in the advancements that are happening from a technological standpoint.
True. Absolutely.
But on the home front, it was a win for us.
Wow.
Because
Amazing.
when I think of my colleague who is, panicking frantically, I tell myself, that action, that situation is what money can't buy.
Wow.
That's the way that is what money cannot buy. The fact that I am here and I know that the children are safe. There's no amount of money.
That peace
can
of mind
replace
alone. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. I think that was a really courageous decision.
And
really.
yes, so, but now we're seeing the children become what we want them to be. My son is a tech freak. He's
fellow techie.
he's studying computer science.
Nice.
At the university. And when you ask him what he wants to do, again, remember that in our own generation, we were told what we should do.
Yes, pretty much.
Yes.
And he's thrown out all sorts from he wants to do hardware.
Okay.
He wants to focus on hardware. He wants to code, write programs.
Okay.
He wants to go into, other programming languages. He probably also has interest in AI.
Yeah.
But it's bits and pieces everywhere.
Yes.
And what I've tried to do is not to get into that space. That space, because I also believe that is where free will comes in. To say, allow them to find their footing. So we have an idea, this is what he wants to do, but we don't know which area, which aspect.
Okay.
Fortunately for us, he came back from school, said to me that his laptop, that the laptop sees his operating system as a virus. I have no clue what that means. So I had to call
Wow.
a tech friend, and I noticed that they were on a WhatsApp call for close to an hour.
Whoa.
I took a walk, you know, a 30-minute walk. I came back again. They were still on the call. And at the end of the call, I had to call my friend to say, what were you guys discussing? It was like, oh, I'm excited for your son. I think he's very smart when it comes to systems administration. And I think he has a knack for AI.
Amazing.
Now, I had to hold those words. And I went back to him to say, my friend spoke very highly of you, and I'm impressed. And he says these are the areas that I think you should be looking at. Now, what have I done? I have not said this is what you must. I said this is where
Like
somebody who
instruction.
will feel the same you should
Yes.
be looking at. That is the kind of guidance we need to give to them. Give them room to make their final decision, but narrow down the decision based on your understanding of that child and what he or she wants to become.
Wow. Amazing. That's a whole lot. And I must say that was a really courageous decision, because most people would say first things first, the economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
The economy.
Absolutely.
And so people always find themselves juggling. And then, of course, that's one thing. Of course, another thing is not every household is a double parent household. Some are just consisting of single parents. So they don't
Absolutely.
necessarily have that option.
True.
So you find out that for a lot of people who don't have the option and they can't outsource, they find themselves having to make some difficult choices. And a lot of it involves like leaving the children to their fate most times. So you find that we're growing a generation of children now that are more independent than the previous generations. You find out that children are now taking certain decisions for themselves that they don't need to be taking.
Absolutely.
And then making choices that have translated to a poor quality of life for them and some sort of poor reputational fallback on the parents. And I think for millennial parents, and this is just me thinking now, for millennial parents, the challenge is really about ensuring that that guidance that you've been talking about is in place. It's been very difficult because everybody talks about the new generation of children. Oh, they are this, they are that. I remember when we started this conversation, Emmanuel was saying something along the lines of children are tough to deal with and things like that. And it all comes from things like this.
Yeah.
But that being said, I would say technology also has a lot of advantages, because that knowledge that wasn't available to our generation, for example, we only started finding out about certain things when we were already well into adulthood. They have access to it long before that time. The downside, again, is the morality aspect, which Emmanuel was touching on earlier. But I think for the technology perspective, if it is properly harnessed, if, for example, you say you won't give children smartphones till they are like 13, or you tell them they have equal portions of physical play and time on their systems or tablets or whatever, there could actually be room to engage, have that presence, and still keep them or grow some sort of independence with them. Our generation, and I have this argument with my friends all the time, our generation didn't come into independence so easily. We almost even had to fight for it. And I can speak from a personal point of view that there were certain things that if I were to do them as a modern parent and comparing them to the things my parents did, honestly, there are a lot of those things that I felt they didn't need to have done. It was, I would say, presentism in their case. So they ended up becoming, I have friends still today who are well into their 40s and they can't take certain decisions without their parents' input. And I always tell them that it sounds normal in today's society. It has been normalized, but it's actually not.
Yeah, which is the point I was trying to make.
Yes.
That sometimes being present can then become a burden.
A burden,
Entirely, right?
Yes.
So we have that, and it's an issue. So we need to be able to balance and then draw the
balance.
line. Which Kayode has been able to do.
It's a balancing act,
Honestly,
and
honestly.
we must. It has to keep being. And I like the point that you made around.
Okay.
The fact that technology is wonderful. I don't think any one of us will sit here today and not talk about the fact that some parts of our lives have become way easier.
Oh, yes. Yes.
From driving to this beautiful venue where many of us haven't been to before by just looking at the map and navigating all your way through. So we know that the pluses are there. you were also speaking about the phone. So personally, I don't even put an age limit on when, a child should have the phone. I think for me, the question I always ask my friends is, what do you want them to have access to?
Right.
Now, because whether you give them the phone or not, if they have friends who have those phones, they would use them.
Anyway.
So it defeats the purpose.
Defeats the purpose.
And you know that the moment with this generation, the moment you say, don't do certain things, that's the reason they would want to
they will make sure they want to find out that
right. So we have to find that sweet spot where we're able to say to them, these are the advantages of this, and these are the disadvantages. This is what this leads to, and you can take that opportunity. But this is potentially where this can lead to if it is not done correctly.
Yes.
And always being able to present them with those options and also provide that guidance based on our own experience. We didn't have all the gadgets, but we had the ability to think of what would mommy say or what would daddy say. And sort of reset ourselves to do what is expected.
Which brings me, thanks for this, which brings me to the next question, basically. When you look at how we were trained, it's more like a communal upbringing where everybody knows everybody. So your parents can easily point to who your friends are. Family, extended, nuclear friends all have say in what you do. They see you where you're not supposed to be. They're able to either report you. You know that once they see you where you know that once you are found where you ought not to be, whether friends to your parents or someone who lives around you, that information will get to your parents. And there are sanctions.
And then you're in trouble.
For that and all.
To put it mildly.
In this generation, community are no longer defined. Kids can have access to the internet and then they have friends anywhere. How, as a parent, how do you then control and ensure that the kind of friends that they keep are not the ones that can influence them negatively? Because the internet is there. They all have access to it. And they learn more from that than their immediate community. How can we ensure a balance and be able to track that, they don't go RE or
So I like the way you have delved into this, and that's because when we think about it critically, who are your friends? Even for us as adults, we understand that friendship is not found on social media. It's a rule of thumb.
Okay.
You're not sure who you're speaking to on the other side.
Yes.
Right? For those of us who are into businesses that have some element of marketing, you know that there's a way you harness social media, but you know that the real impact is being able to make a human connection. Right?
Yes.
And that will vary from from product to product. But by and large, this is where the guidance of the parents come through. I have been privileged to know physically most of my children's friends. Because I've not only made it a point of duty to take them to those friends' houses, but also to be able to tell them to invite their friends over. And why is that important? That process helps you to sieve the kind of person they are moving with. If they get it right physically, chances are that to a great extent, they would be able to wriggle through the terrain of social friendship, as the case will be. But they need to get it right here. So what do we need to do? We need to get involved in it. Tell them to invite their friends home. I had the privilege of having to invite my friends home when I was growing up. So I see that model worked for me because I wouldn't bring a guy that I'm not sure that my dad
would approve of. Yes, absolutely. Yes,
and likewise, they would encourage me to go to their own parents as well. So we kept a small, close-knit circle that is still intact till today. Didn't mean that we didn't have our own bad sides, but we had a way of,
managing
curtailing it.
and
Absolutely.
Yes,
So I encourage my kids. I encourage people I know. Bring your friends. Let your parents know your friends. Let them know them. Let them get to meet them. Right? Because it's the only way you can also ask yourself. Through this process, we've been able to weed out one or two friends. I said,
wow.
The feedback we're hearing from school about this person is not good. And these kids will go to them and say to them, you're behaving this way, I don't like it. I don't think, and because they're very open about these things, they're able to cut off those friendships. But it's a learning process for them as well, because as they grow older, these are decisions they will have to take. They will have to cut off certain friendships or certain relationships. But they have to learn how to do it without feeling emotionally bankrupt or feeling bad that they've done something, not good. They have to start to learn from now. And so that for me is one way that works.
Okay.
The other way, obviously, is social media has to be controlled.
Okay.
To a great extent.
It does.
Unfortunately, social media has been designed not to be controlled. It is free for all.
Yes.
But we need to teach them, as far as we know and with what we have experienced, how they need to do certain things. Unfortunately for us, some of these kids are even smarter when it comes to navigating the social media space than ourselves.
Yes,
but
true.
And erase tracks.
Good. But our experience of the world and the realities that are out there come as lessons to, better help them make, good decisions around the kind of things they can do on social media. But there is no one size fits all approach. It's really just being able to play the part that you can play and nurture the ones that you think require them to make choices.
All right. So it's been a very robust conversation. Thank you so much, Kayode. And we've talked about a lot today. We've talked about the impact of morals. We've talked about the impact of the ethical aspect of millennial parenting. We've also talked about technology and the role that it plays in parenting. And based on everything you've said, there's one thing that really comes to light, which is the fact that balance is required. Whether it's the deployment of technology, whether it's being present with the children, even the way the upbringing itself is being conducted, balance is just required. You talked about guidance and you talked about how it's stark contrast with how we were raised, still underscoring the need to ensure that that's properly done and in place. So I'd like to just say in conclusion, what would your thoughts be in terms of navigating the challenges that parenting brings to millennials? Because in the next 10 years or so, their children would become adults, and then, in fact, I would even say that will happen sooner. So there will be additional challenges to navigate now with adult children and all that. But as of now, that we're still having this, they're still having young children and everything, how best, from your own experience, would you say millennial parents can best manage the relationships with their children while ensuring that they grow into wholesome individuals?
Great. Thanks, Lola. And I think you've done a fantastic job in summing that up as well.
Yay. Thank you.
I wish there were a rule book. I wish there were certain steps. But the truth is, navigating the terrain of parenting is often challenging. Quite nebulous and cloudy as well, but it in the long run, if done properly, has huge benefits.
Yeah.
What I can say for a fact is, one, we do not have a one-size-fits-all approach. In fact, you're right. 10 years from now, some of what we may be discussing, we may not even have a choice, because they probably would be featuring as part of our day-to-day lives, especially when you look at things around technology.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So how will I sum up today's conversation, I'll look at it from two angles. And the first thing I would say is, we as parents must understand that there is a role of, we have a custodial role. And because we have that role to play, we must make room for the ability to give instructions that must be followed. These are not painstaking instructions, but these are instructions that must be given in love.
In love, okay.
Yes. Okay. Basically, because you have the child's best interest at heart, and you know, because you have gone ahead of them, to know that these instructions will set them on that right path. The flip side of the coin is that we must be very open, extremely open to engagements. This generation and subsequent generations will be asking of us questions that we dare not ask our parents. We must calm down or come off our high horse, see ourselves as those children, and be willing to engage at their level. And the engagement is not because you want to prove a point to them, but because it is an invitation to understand their own psyche and their thought process, and by extension, their decision-making abilities. That engagement is there, and it must be robust enough to allow them to explore the expanse of options, opportunities that they have to come out, to where they want to be. And if it turns out to be what you want for them, then you're aligned. If it is not, then we need to look for a way to help them understand why as well. But it must still be through the process of engagement. That, for me, I think, is the magic ingredient, regardless of which generation you find yourself in. There must be instructions that will guide you to life and living well, and there must be engagements that open up your ability to reason and take better decisions.
Amazing. So at the end of the day, there is a rule book.
Well, if you say so.
All right. Yeah. I think for me, my take home is that as parents need to be conscious, and it's basically how I put it, that parents need to be conscious of how they live their lives, because their kids are also learning fast, and they're learning from them. And we must live the society better than we met it. And it basically means that you must do the right things at the right time. Whatever you're not proud of, please do not do it, because your kids are also watching at you, watching you. So would you prefer that they pick that up? And in future, when you see those things, because we're in a digital age, and these records can be there for them to watch permanently. Would you be proud of what you've done in the past? This is a $1 million
Emmanuel, you're giving daddy vibes.
This is the $1 million question. Would you be proud of what you have done 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? I leave it at that. On this note, we'll call it a day. I hope you have enjoyed every bit of this conversation. Thank you very much, Kayode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And maybe we'll put him on the spot here. We might just be based on popular demand. If you find this episode very interesting, please drop a note. Tell us you want him
Let
back.
us know if you want Kayode back.
We'll take the evidence to him.
Absolutely.
And trust him. We'll get him back here to discuss something entirely different. I hope you have enjoyed every bit of this conversation. You know what to do. You know what? Just subscribe to the channel and drop your comments. We'd also like to know or hear from you. What is your thought on this topic, right?
Yes,
Great.
and like the video, like the video.
Share. You know?
Yes.
If you find it very educative and you would want family folks to learn, kindly, you're free to share the videos with them. Let them see what we're doing on this platform. From me, it's bye for now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.